Previously on Chibi D&D, Goblins, Rats, Hobgoblins, and Lightning. Okay, you're caught up. At this point in the dungeon, we come across a locked door that Mr. Scribbles can't quite fit under. So what does the Paladin do? A horrendous odor hits us and the Paladin uses Detect Undead to find a pile of zombies lying on the floor. His eyes light up. Alzahar practically skips into the room with a massive, crazed grin on his face and holy smites the shiznit out of them. While Torak would have loved to help, it was obvious that the Paladin really wanted this for himself, so for the most part he stood back. Once done, they find a chest at the end of the room. Alzahar smashes it open and finds 5 banded agates. He hands one to Torak to inspect but finds no magical properties. With that, he pockets the 4 and lets Torak keep the 1. Looking over to Red, she shakes her head, utterly uninterested in shiny pebbles. We find another room, this time guarded by skeletons. After Alzahar finishes them off, Torak rushes to the chest and tries to smash it open, but instead stubs his toe and falls over. Alzahar just shakes his head and smashes the lock open. As he does this, Torak thinks back to the first chest and realizes that the only reason he got to keep an agate was because Alzahar needed him to inspect it. Now that they know that they aren't magical, the Paladin had no reason to hand him any more gems and would most likely pocket whatever he finds from here on out. Not happy with this, Torak dives for the chest as soon as Alzahar opens the lid and snatches all 10 obsidian stones. Alzahar glares daggers at Torak, who, not being the bravest, regrettably hands over 5. At this point, Torak and Alzahar have spent almost all of their spell slots for the day and decided to barricade themselves in the room to prepare for a long rest. Red, the oldest in the group, just shakes her head. We take turns guarding the door and luckily nothing attacks us. During his rest, Torak has a dream that he's falling towards an arcane circle covered in infernal writing. Before he could try to read any of it, everything goes black and he wakes up. Proceeding onwards, we come across what looks like a church door. Alzahar inspects it, but since Torak already had Mr. Squiggles investigate and find no enemies in that room, he tries to rush in. However, Alzahar is blocking the way, so Torak, being too weak to shove him aside, drops down and tries to crawl between his legs. Alzahar just looks down and clenches his legs together, strangling Torak. Torak is left gasping, "Let me go!" and knocks on the door in defiance. Eventually, the Paladin lets go and they find a chapel with a statue of an unknown god. The barbarian passes it up, the Paladin knocks it over because it's not his god, and Torak steals the gems that were scattered around it. In the next room, they're attacked by rat swarms. Torak is nearly killed by the time Red gets them off him, and the Paladin turns around and slaps Torak with a rough lay on hands, shouting, "Get it together!" Stunned, Torak looks at the rat swarms on Alzahar and attacks, successfully killing them off. In the next room, Alzahar once again gets to smite some undead. Torak is now completely aware that the Paladin can and probably wants to handle it on his own. So when he spots the chest in the corner of the room, the first thing he does is rush over and smack it with his staff. The other 2 look on in disbelief, but are quickly surrounded by the 5 undead. As they fight, Torak continues to hit at the chest, desperate to get to the treasure before the Paladin has a chance to. Unfortunately, Torak has noodle arms and can't quite break it open. But he's not giving up! A grunt of frustration draws his attention back to the battle where Alzahar had missed his attack and was currently holding back a zombie with his sword. Red was in the back dealing with another undead, and things didn't look like they were going as well as he had assumed they would. He glances down at the chest, then at Alzahar, then at Red, then back down at the chest. He raises his staff hesitantly, trying to decide what to do. A cold sweat breaks out as he struggles with his overwhelming greed. His indecision is apparent as he starts to shake visibly while holding his staff up. Closing his eyes, he eventually swings his staff and lands a nat 20 ray of frost on the undead attacking Alzahar, killing it permanently. Exhausted by his inner struggle, Torak slouches to the side and lets Alzahar try to smash open the chest. After failing his strength check, he pulls out a lockpicking kit and opens it with ease, finding 6 moss agates. Of course, Red and Torak are left wondering why the heck he kept smashing things when he could have just been picking locks this whole time. He turns to Torak and hands him 3 agates. Not knowing how to say thank you, Torak sputters and accepts them awkwardly. The Paladin then mentions that the stones are essentially worth the same as platinum. After hearing this, Red suddenly realizes that she's been gypped.